You thought you were done with that version of yourself. The one who numbed instead of healed, who avoided instead of faced, who shrank when they should have stood tall. The version of you who gave just enough to survive, but never fully showed up. You thought you had left all that behind. You worked on yourself. You journaled, reflected. Maybe you went to therapy. Maybe you had breakthroughs. Maybe you even felt free for a while, like you were finally turning into someone new. But lately, you've noticed it again. That old tension in your chest. That old voice in your head. That familiar fog that rolls in when life feels too much. You're slipping back into the overthinking, back into the scrolling, back into the avoidance, back into that strange numbness that feels safer than being present. And the worst part? You don't even know when it started. It just crept in. One skipped habit, one little compromise, one ignored emotion, and before you knew it, you were wearing that old version of yourself again, like a costume you didn't remember putting on. It's not because you're weak. It's not because you're lazy. It's not because you're broken. It's because most people don't understand this. The old self doesn't leave quietly. It doesn't get erased. It waits, patiently, silently, like a familiar coat on a cold day. It knows you'll reach for it the moment life gets hard again. Not because you want to go back, but because it feels safer than the unknown. Even when it's suffocating you. You fall back because the body remembers. You regress because the nervous system craves predictability. You return because pain, at least familiar pain, feels more manageable than uncertainty. This isn't failure. This isn't weakness. This isn't proof you've undone your healing. It's a return to the wound, not as punishment, but as invitation. And that's what we'll explore here. Not just why you keep falling back into the self you swore you outgrew, but how to finally break the invisible loyalty you still hold to that version of you. So take a breath. Stay with this. Let's go beneath the noise together. You see, most people think healing is a straight line. You do the work. You push through. You learn, you grow, and you never look back. But that's not how it works. Growth isn't a staircase. It's a spiral. And sometimes you return to old places, not because you're failing, but because you're being asked to meet them with new eyes. What you're feeling now, this collapse, this slide backward, this inner relapse, it isn't the end of your progress. It's a checkpoint, a mirror, a moment that asks, will you abandon yourself again? Not just in behavior, but in awareness, in compassion, in courage. Because when you start to fall back into old patterns, it isn't always about habits. It's about identity. There is a version of you that is still alive in the shadows. The one who learned to survive by shutting down. The one who made themselves small to stay safe. The one who chose numbness because feeling was too dangerous. You may have outgrown the life that version of you lived, but the self, the emotional blueprint, that's still inside you. And here's the truth no one likes to say. That version of you isn't evil. They're not your enemy. They were doing the best they could. But now, they're outdated. Like an operating system that keeps crashing every time you try to update your life. And until you confront that version of yourself. Until you face the one who's still scared to live fully. To love without self-sabotage. To show up even when it's hard. You will keep returning. Over and over. To the same emotional dead ends. Because the nervous system doesn't respond to goals. It responds to safety. And safety is often found in what is known, even when it's quietly destroying you. So the question becomes, can you recognize when the old self is driving? Can you pause and not react? Can you stay present with the discomfort long enough to not run? Because in that space, that moment of choice, something shifts. Not quickly, not dramatically, but slowly, like ice melting. That's where the real change begins. You don't break cycles with motivation. You break them with awareness, with patience, with brutal honesty, and most of all, with compassion for the parts of you that still don't believe it's safe to change. Because here's what no one tells you. Every destructive behavior you repeat, every habit you hate, every pattern you're ashamed of, was born from something that once protected you. Procrastination? Maybe it started as a shield, a way to avoid failure, a way to delay the pain of not feeling good enough, numbing out with food, screens, or scrolling. Maybe it was how you survived loneliness, how you coped with overstimulation, how you silenced the ache that no one else saw. Even the self-sabotage, that maddening tendency to ruin things just as they're getting better. It's not random. It's not irrational. It's a defense mechanism. Because to your nervous system, success might feel like exposure. Joy might feel like vulnerability. Love might feel like danger. If you were trained, through trauma, through conditioning, through experience, to associate good things with instability, abandonment, or pain, then of course you'll push them away. Of course you'll retreat back into what's predictable, even if that predictability is a cage. And that's the paradox. You're not sabotaging yourself because you want to suffer. You're doing it because part of you believes it's safer to stay in the pain you know than to risk the unknown you don't. That's how deep the wiring goes. And until you stop shaming yourself, until you stop calling it weakness or laziness, you'll keep reinforcing the very thing you're trying to heal. Because shame doesn't create change. It creates silence. It creates paralysis. It drives the cycle deeper underground. But when you start to listen, when you get curious instead of critical, something softens. You start to realize, this part of me is not bad, scared, it's trying. It just doesn't know another way yet. And in that moment of understanding, you stop fighting yourself and start befriending the truth. There's a reason the old self feels so powerful. It's not just in your mind. It's in your body. It's in your breath. It's in the way your shoulders tense. When life asks something more of you, it's in the way your stomach knots. When you try to speak your truth, it's in the way your heart races. At the thought of being seen, really seen. Because healing isn't just mental. It's physical. It's cellular. It's somatic. And the version of you that you keep slipping back into, that version is stored in your nervous system, in your muscle memory, in the patterns your body learned to survive. You can't just think your way out of that. You have to feel your way through it. And that's terrifying, because feeling means being present. And being present means facing the very things you've spent years avoiding. But this is the deeper truth. Every time you avoid discomfort, every time you run from stillness, every time you check out instead of check in, you reinforce the idea that you can't handle yourself. And the longer that idea lives in you, the harder it becomes to trust your own capacity to grow. But here's the miracle. You don't have to transform overnight. You don't need a grand rebirth. You just need one moment of staying, one moment of not running, one breath where you feel the urge to escape. And you say gently, I see you, but not this time. That moment, it matters more than you know. Because in that moment, you teach your body something new. That safety is possible without numbing. That discomfort can pass without destruction. That you can feel deeply and still be okay. And when you do that enough times, the old self starts to loosen its grip. Not because you forced it to leave, but because it no longer has a job. This is what most people misunderstand about change. It's not a single decision. It's not a breakthrough moment. It's not some dramatic event where everything suddenly shifts. Real change is quiet, unremarkable, almost boring. It's the thousands of small moments where you do something slightly different, even though your entire body is begging you to go back to the old way. It's the moment you reach for your phone and pause. The moment you want to cancel plans out of fear, but show up anyway. The moment you feel like numbing out, but stay with the discomfort for 10 seconds longer than you did last time. That's what builds resilience. That's what rewires the pattern. Not perfection, not intensity, just gentle, repeated interruptions to the loop. But it takes patience. Because your nervous system isn't interested in potential. It's interested in proof. It needs to feel again and again that new can be safe. That presence won't always hurt. That staying doesn't mean destruction. And you provide that proof. With every small act of self-regulation. With every breath you stay connected. With every time you choose not to abandon yourself in the moment you need yourself most. Because that's the deeper wound here, isn't it? Not that the world abandoned you. but that somewhere along the way, you learned to abandon yourself. When it got too hard, too heavy, too loud, you left. Mentally, emotionally, spiritually, you checked out to survive. And that made sense back then. But you're not back then anymore. You're here, now, with more tools, with more awareness, with a deeper longing to live honestly, even if you're not sure how. So start there. Start where you are, with this moment, this breath, this part of you that's still listening. Because if you've made it this far, you haven't given up, and that matters more than you think. You're not broken. You've just been trained by life, by experience, by pain, to associate safety with the wrong things. Avoidance, numbness, control, overthinking, disconnection. These weren't flaws. They were adaptations. They were the tools you used to survive what you didn't yet know how to feel. But now those same tools are keeping you stuck. Safe but small. Numb but unfulfilled. In control but disconnected from yourself. And maybe the scariest thing about healing is realizing that part of you doesn't want to let those tools go. Because who are you without the overthinking? Who are you without the constant distraction? Who are you if you're not always fixing, hiding, avoiding, performing? That question is terrifying. Because for most of your life, you've defined yourself through what you had to endure, through what you had to hold together, through how well you could survive pain. But healing asks you a different question. Are you willing to meet the parts of yourself that have never known peace? Not to destroy them, not to shame them, but to sit with them, to listen, to witness what they've been carrying all this time. That's the deeper work, the quieter work, the kind of work that doesn't always feel like progress, but is, because when you stop trying to fix yourself and start trying to understand yourself, something shifts. You stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What happened to me? What did I learn from that? What do I still believe because of that?" And those questions, they don't just reveal pain, they reveal patterns, they reveal possibilities. They open a door that shame kept locked. And once that door opens, you no longer have to live as the version of you that closed it in the first place. There comes a moment in every healing journey where you realize you can't optimize your way out of this. You can't hack it. You can't shortcut it. You can't intellectualize your pain into submission. Because the parts of you that hurt aren't asking for solutions. They're asking for presence. Not another plan. Not another podcast. Not another 5-step system to become your highest self. They just want you, here, now, unarmored. And that's the hardest part, isn't it? To stay with yourself, without fixing, without numbing, without performing strength you don't actually feel. To sit in a moment of vulnerability, and not bolt, not scroll, not dissociate, just be there. Because inside that stillness is where you'll meet the version of you you've spent a lifetime avoiding. The one who was never allowed to feel weak. The one who learned that silence was safer than asking for help. The one who internalized that being low maintenance made you more lovable. And when you finally meet them, not with judgment, but with understanding, everything begins to shift. Not because the pain disappears, but because it no longer defines you. You realize this isn't just a wound. It's a message. It's a memory. It's a map. And if you're willing to trace it, if you're willing to follow it back to the first moment you felt you had to shut down, had to be strong, had to disappear, you begin to understand why healing can feel so much like grieving. Because you're not just moving forward. You're letting go of all the versions of you who never got what they needed, who never had the space to rest, who never heard the words, "You didn't deserve that, and you don't have to carry it anymore." That's not easy work, but it's sacred work. Because when you finally give yourself the permission to feel, to fall apart, to be real, you stop fighting the truth and start integrating it. And in that slow, sacred undoing, you begin finally to come home to yourself. Coming home to yourself isn't some poetic phrase. It's a lived experience, a quiet, gradual return to the parts of you that were never allowed to exist in the light. And when you begin that return, you might feel lost at first, because you've spent years building identities around survival, the achiever, the peacemaker, the overthinker, the caretaker, the strong one. You've learned how to show up in the world as what others needed from you. And somewhere along the way, you forgot what you needed from yourself. So when the masks start to fall, it's disorienting, it's quiet, it's strange. You'll wake up and feel hollow, not because something's wrong, but because space is being made. Space where noise used to live, space where patterns used to repeat. And in that space, new things can emerge, but only if you don't rush to fill it. You have to learn how to sit in the in-between, the space between the person you were and the person you're becoming. That space is uncomfortable. It's uncertain. It's full of questions you don't yet have answers for. But it's also holy. It's necessary, because it's where you meet yourself honestly, without the mask, without the performance, without the filters. It's where you ask, who am I when I'm not trying to be good enough for someone else? Who am I when I stop over-functioning, over-giving, over-apologizing? Who am I when I'm no longer ruled by fear, by guilt, by invisible expectations? These are the questions that don't have instant answers. They unfold slowly. They reveal themselves in the way you treat yourself on a bad day, in the way you speak to your body when no one is listening, in the way you forgive yourself for falling short, not just once, but over and over again. Because true healing isn't about never falling. It's about how gently you return. Each time you do. Maybe this is what no one told you. Healing isn't something you finish. It's something you live. It's not a straight path or a final destination. It's a rhythm, a relationship, a return. You don't graduate from your pain. You learn how to hold it differently, with more softness, with less shame, with a deeper understanding of how it shaped you, but doesn't have to define you. And with that shift, something else happens. You begin to notice the moments that used to go unnoticed. The way you pause before reacting. The way you speak to yourself after making a mistake. The way you stay, not because it's easy, but because leaving would mean abandoning yourself all over again. That's growth. That's healing. Not the Instagram version, but the real, lived, quiet kind. It shows up in how you choose to rest, without guilt, how you ask for help, without shame, how you let people see you, even when you're messy, even when you're tired, even when you don't have a single thing figured out. Because now you know, being seen isn't the danger. Hiding is. Now you understand. Your strength isn't in pretending to be okay. It's in being honest when you're not. That's what changes everything. Because once you stop performing for approval, you start connecting from truth. And that truth, it attracts the right people. The ones who don't flinch when you're raw. The ones who can sit with you in silence. And not need you to be better to be worthy of love. And slowly, without even realizing it, you begin to feel safe in your own skin. You begin to trust your body again. You begin to listen to what you need, not what the world expects. And that's not selfish. That's sacred. It's how you build a life that doesn't drain you. A life where you don't have to abandon yourself just to belong. A life where peace isn't something you chase. It's something you allow. Maybe you've been waiting for permission. To stop running. To stop fixing. To stop pretending you're fine when you're quietly unraveling inside. So, this is it. You don't have to prove anything. Not to the world. Not to your past. Not even to yourself. You're allowed to be exactly where you are. Even if that place is uncertain. Even if it's heavy. Even if it doesn't look like progress to anyone else. Because real healing isn't always visible. It's in the decision to pause instead of push. To feel instead of flee. To tell yourself the truth, even when it breaks your heart. You don't have to have the answers. You just have to stay honest. You just have to keep returning to what's real. Without numbing. Without apologizing. Without abandoning the parts of you that still feel broken. Because those parts aren't wrong. They're just unfinished. And maybe that's all healing really is. Learning how to live. With the parts of you that are still becoming. You're not behind. You're not failing. You're not weak. You're human. And maybe you've carried more than most. Maybe you've had to grow up too fast. Adapt too quickly. Keep going when you should have been allowed to fall apart. But even so, there is still time to return, to soften, to breathe again. So if no one said it yet, you don't have to keep running. You don't have to carry this alone. You don't have to keep hiding behind strength that's killing you quietly. You are allowed to feel it all. And you are still worthy of love. Even here, even now, even in the middle of the mess. This is not the end. This is the beginning. The slow, sacred return to yourself. And I hope you stay. Not for anyone else. Not for some future version of you. But for the person you are right now. Who has always deserved to be seen. To be held. To be free.